Well, a very good morning, everybody, from my writing room in the middle of suburbia in Johannesburg. And this is the Financial Mail AdFocus webinar. I'm the project editor at Jeremy Maggs. With me is last year's jury chair, Phumi Mashego, and this year's boss of the project. There she is in the middle of the screen, Tumi Rabanya. To the two of you, thank you very much and welcome, Phumi. I'm going to have something to say about the plot in your shot a little bit later, but let me just set the scene for you. The next 45 minutes or so, I want us to focus on the AdFocus project. But I want to start off, I think this gives us a very good opportunity to start off with an expert overview on the state of the advertising industry. And let me tell you why I want to do this. In last week's FM, which I think has gained a fair amount of notoriety and traction in the advertising industry, I wrote a story that said or explained, it was headlined, how the virus has broken advertising. And spend, and I had figures from AC Nielsen, down a conservative 20%. And I use that word conservative carefully because I think it's probably a whole lot more. So I want to talk about where we stand in that, as far as that's concerned. And then I want to talk about this year's project. It's a very different project, but it is still going ahead. It's an important issue. It's an important idea within the advertising industry. I've worked out the tech, so I can take questions. So at any point, if you agree or disagree with our two guests, or with me for that matter, I'll keep an eye on the screen next to me and we can take questions as well. But Phumi Mashego, let me start with you if I can. We're, I think, 117 or 118 days into this lockdown. In your opinion, as someone who is in the heart of the industry, how's the paradigm changed?
I can't believe you're still counting, Jeremy. Most of us have lost track of what day or what time of day it is or what day of the week it is. But I think for a lot of brands, we've come out of on the other side now, where we have stopped making the ads that are just a montage of empty streets, of a voiceover wantingly talk about going back outside. I think we've passed that, and we're in a place where we've repositioned and we're figuring out what this new world order is and what it is that our customers want to hear, what it is that consumers are looking to hear. But we're also still very cautious because there's still a lot of stuff that is different. There's still a lot of stuff that we don't understand yet, not about consumer behavior. And definitely in the South African context, the economy, the incredibly depressed economy, also makes it very, very difficult for a lot of our clients to commit to long-term spend. The good news is that as advertisers and advertising agencies, we are used to rapid learning. We're used to changing with new things coming along, with new technologies coming along, with new movements in consumer behavior. We know how to rapidly learn, how to adapt and change and lead our clients into that space. And I think when the fear on the client side has subsided, we will see some exciting work coming out again out of ad agencies.
Let me be the agent provocateur here. When I hear Phumi Mashego talk about the advertising industry still figuring it out, if I was a brand, I would be concerned about that, because it is absolutely, we know that the model of advertising needs to change. But surely the industry should have figured this out already?
I think that the firstly, I think the model has been showing signs of breaking for a while. That's the first thing. And the second thing is COVID-19 has actually just accelerated I think that realization. Now, for me, the brokenness is also reciprocal, right? So client requirements and client demands of agencies have been changing just because their economic realities have been changing for a while. And I think it's a mutual thing. So I think client and agency partnership now more than ever is absolutely, absolutely critical in getting to the answers. one thing that COVID-19 for me has accentuated is the big A, the big ambiguity in the VUCA acronym, right? Volatile, unpredictable, and complex environments. And I think clients as well as agencies have to embrace that reality that these are ambiguous times and we have to do it together. So kind of like the, for lack of a better word, the blame shifting between client and agencies, now's not the time for it, I think it's a time of growing up, if I can put it that way.
Mpumi Mashiko, can I come back to you? I think the relationship between advertising agencies and their clients is very much like the plant that is behind you, that it needs to be changed and repotted. How has that partnership been forced to change, do you think?
Look, I think, and we have in the AdFocus Awards, we do have a partnership.
See, everybody, look at the plant behind them.
Jeremy,
I know.
The plant behind me is actually a great analogy for the way that we have to work. So if you see my plant behind me, which is growing according to what it needs, I think one of the things about partnerships between agencies and clients is being aware of the fact that what we need changes and that we have to grow together in it. And we're in it together. We're not us and them. We're not on the other side of the table. We have to move together. And like all relationships, it is about a very deep sense of shared outcomes. We've got to understand that I, as an ad agency, will only grow my business if the business of my clients is also growing. And that's why we have to be responsible about the way that we are communicating for our clients. We have to be incredibly outgoing. We have to be brave, especially in this time where there's so much ambiguity. We have to be brave, both clients and agencies, and we have to go where the imagination can take us, because the new world and the problems of the world that we're in now are only going to be solved with imagination. And that's what the agency brings to the client side. So the sober-sided mind of marketing needs the ad agency's fun, flirty way of looking at problems and solving those problems in order to be able to be relevant, to remain relevant to customers who may be fearful, customers who may be unsure of what the world looks like. And in an economy that is incredibly stretched, it's also making whatever your product is or your client's product, making it an essential part of the survival that we are all going through.
To me,
I just want to add to that.
Sorry, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to add to, that thought process. Mpumi spoke about being able to think in short-term frames, right? Time frames. I think that's super, super important. And I think from an agency point of view, understanding that your client metrics and embracing data actually only empowers the creative output. So you need both sides. You need the data and the matrix to enable effective flirtation, if I can put it that way. And I think now more than ever, Mpumi is absolutely correct in that now more than ever, you need to rely on the imagination, the power to fathom like a different reality, a better reality, a more resilient kind of reality. But that needs to be informed by the comprehension of data and your client's metrics, and the two kind of not working at odds. This is about reciprocity now more than ever.
Just very quickly, I want to reference Tato Mduli and Palesa. Folks, both of you are asking questions about this year's entries and any tips and past winning agencies and all of those things. Part 2 of this conversation, we are going to get there. We're going to tell you how to give us the perfect AdFocus entry, or at least they're going to tell you how to give the perfect AdFocus entry. I want to come back, Mpumi Mashiko, to you. You talk about the power of imagination. I like this this phrase about effective flirtation as well that Tumi used. But let me put to you, Pumi, that it's very difficult to be more creative, more imaginative, more risky when your entire business model is predicated on fear and uncertainty.
I don't know whose business model is not predicated on uncertainty, because we can only do what we think is right, and we can lead our customer to that place. A lot of people sit in those two-way mirrors and listen to all sorts of listening to customers say, this is what we want. I wish this ad was a little bit more like this, as we research it to death and we research concepts to death. But the reality is that the consumer does not always know what it is that they want and how they want it. You have to make your product something that they need. If you'd ask Henry Ford famously says, if you'd ask the consumer, they would have said they wanted faster horses, and he gave them cars. And that's the space in which we all have to operate now. In particular, where there is so much, in the environment where there is so much uncertainty, where there is so much fear, this is the opportunity for brands and brand owners to be the sense of comfort for their customers. This is the time where we can give the certainty. You can give the certainty of what it is that your product brings to their life and how that changes their life or makes their life better. That's where we have to now play, but we have to take them there, because they're not going to be the ones to tell you that this is how I need it to be. They're looking for a faster horse. They're looking to go back to the way that things were, but we're never going back.
Absolutely.
And we have the tools.
I actually want to click into this idea of fear as well. I think now more than ever, the evidence is sitting right in front of us that fear-based thinking is not what is going to lead us into the future. Again, COVID-19 is demonstrating to us that what is going to get you to the next day is actually overcoming that fear. I mean, I'm talking about this on a personal level. Otherwise, we'd all just cower and just lie in our beds and wait, for our turn. But in that same way, I think it brings back the kind of importance of brand purpose, and the chance to demonstrate in action what brand purpose actually means. So the guidance that clients need to kind of fashion that language of the future is absolutely all about that. I think guided by brand purpose now more than ever, again, it's about holding hands with our clients and kind of navigating our way into that future together. One quarter at a time, if that's necessary,
Pumi Mashiko, back to you. If we are using the phrase or the word guidance in terms of that relationship, let me suggest that is predicated then on good leadership. How has brand leadership needed to change in this time? What is expected of people either stewarding brands or managing agencies? How have they had to change their approach, up their game?
The worst word of the pandemic worldwide for me has been pivot. And unfortunately, that's where the answer is right now, right? Is for a lot of brand leaders, for a lot of brand managers, CMOs, this is the opportunity to take back the power that we've lost in the boardroom. For a long time now, a lot of CMOs had given up that power in the boardroom, at the boardroom table, and more the CFOs were making every decision. But now we're consumers much more are looking for connections. We're looking for old connections, old ties, and we're looking for new ways of realizing those connections. The communication specialist now is so much more important in the way that they're able to shift the focus of a business back into being an important and central part of a consumer's life. back into being an important part of the decision-making process. It's the consumers that are going to lead us there. We're not going to sharpen our pencils anymore. So the CFO's cutting of budgets is not going to help. This is the time when you need to be communicating more. This is the time where you actually need to be spending more, because you need to make your brand top of mind for that consumer when they are making their decision in the 20 minutes that they have in the Pick and Pay or whatever store that they have, where they are sitting in front of 20 different toothpastes. This is the moment where, if you have spent your money right and if you've done the right job in terms of communicating your brand and your brand essence, that consumer is going to connect with that particular brand and recognize it quickly in the moment of making a decision to take it. And then they're going to vote with their money, which is what we all want at this time.
Absolutely.
All right. So to me, that makes perfect sense to me in terms of the new strata of leadership that we need. Are we seeing evidence of that in the industry right now? Are you seeing work that reflects that type of vision that Phumi Mashiko is outlining?
You know, I top of mind for me, especially at the beginning of lockdown, I still refer to this, you know, the work done by a brand, not Brand South Africa, sorry, SA Tourism. First of all, you know, it was such a pleasant surprise, I think, for a brand like that whose core is about encouraging South Africans to travel. It was special to see them kind of like take the higher purpose and take on the higher message that at this time we need to hold back so that we can work towards a future where we can do this again. So for me, that's one piece of work that absolutely stands out at a time when it was most needed, I think. And then I think about, you know, you've got to love the work done recently by Chicken Licken. I think it, you know, came from Joe Public. And for me, it took, you know, it was a montage almost of all the moments, all the new moments of humor that South Africans have coined in responding or reacting to the situation that we are in, and taking it back again to the brand essence, you know, of this Chicken Licken, and then kind of embracing or demonstrating soul. And I think what's important, you know, I think about words like brand essence and all our wonderful terminology. That's important to us, right? But the ultimate demonstration of that is when consumers get it and when they can relate and connect to it. And for me, that's what stands out about those particular executions. And then I was reflecting last night as well on, you know, the long-term investment we've seen from Lifebuoy with Unilever. You know, a couple of years ago, we reflected on this case study where, you know, washing hands amongst children and literally, you know, getting into the upper echelons of the United Nations was seen as a health and a preventative measure. But actually, look at how far it's gone, right? Just that one campaign becoming a global campaign and actually being ahead of its time in what we all need to do now. You know, so those are a couple of examples. Yep.
Phumi, do you have anything to add to that?
Just talking about the Lifebuoy and also looking a little further abroad, something that I haven't seen and missed here in South Africa. So we've had great brand essence communication, but what we haven't seen, which some of the brands have done very well abroad, and I think L'Oreal with their hair washing and hair dyeing. So nobody can go to the hair salons, right? So this is, and hair and the treatment of our hair is a very big part of our life, particularly as women. and what they then did was insert themselves into the practical life of their customer, where they moved away from just telling you about what it is that their brand does and how it does it, but also having opportunities of then saying, this is how the dye part of our business works. This is how you do it by yourself at home. So giving solutions to things that everybody is kind of, and taking cognizance and connecting with the customer and consumer to saying everybody online is complaining about this particular thing. This is how I'm going to solve that problem, and this is how my product solves that problem. And secondly, looking at the way that we are consuming media.
Yes.
You know, earlier before we started, Jeremy, I was telling you that I don't watch the news anymore. In fact, what I don't do is I no longer watch live TV in the way that we've always watched live TV, where you come home after work and you turn on your TV, where the advertising rolls up as it rolls up, and you are exposed to it. The way that we consume media has also changed, which is going to also be very interesting, looking at the way going into the new year, how brands utilize the way that we are consuming media to communicate and connect with their customers.
And one of the things, I don't want to get onto the AdFocus entries just yet, but I think it's fair to say that when we get to looking at what will make the winning media agency this year, part of what I imagine, Tumi, you and your jury will be looking at is to see that new adaptability in terms of using media. But let's get to that a little bit later.
Yeah.
I want to come back, if I can, and maybe Tumi, you pick this up. You were both reflecting on this, the notion of brand purpose. In this time, how does brand purpose need to change? And can a brand change its purpose just because of an event like this?
I think, Jeremy, if you have to change your purpose at this stage, you, as a brand, I think it would be important for the brand to reflect on whether that was the correct purpose to begin with. You know, purpose by its nature is not short-termist, right? However, the demonstration thereof is what you can do in bite sizes. So for me, when I think about brand purpose, I think about it as a long-term mission that a brand would be on, that is demonstrated through various phases of the brand's lifespan. You know, I went back to, you know, what Lifebuoy, for example, has demonstrated, you know, which is really about being proactive about hygiene, or rather using hygiene to be proactive about healthcare. And now more than ever, that mission, you know, is amplified by the circumstance and situation that we are in right now. And I think that that's very important. So purpose is not short term. If you have to change your purpose in reaction to a situation, then you've got to think twice about what mission you were on to begin with.
I mean, to me, I accept that to a point, but I mean, no one. I mean, we've used this. You know, Pumi's expression about she doesn't want to hear the word pivot again. I don't want to hear this descriptor black swan again. But the reality is, no one could have foreseen this pandemic, and therefore brands have had to recalibrate the way in which they think in order to achieve the adaptability that you have both spoken about.
Jeremy, I think there's a huge difference between recalibration and literally, you know, making kind of like a 180 turn. And I think for me, recalibration is what's important. If you have to wake up the next day, which is a long-term investment, by the way, defining purpose is a long-term investment. If you have to wake up the next day and throw it all away, I would be seriously concerned about the investment that you made in the first place. I would seriously interrogate whether it was the correct investment. I think the courage that it takes is looking at the recalibration in its phases, rather than throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Okay, folks.
I don't know.
Sorry, Pumi, just step in, and then I've got two other broad themes I want to raise, and then I want to start talking about the AdFocus project. But go ahead.
You know, I mean, the Black Swan event, as it were. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a reckoning for a lot of brands in terms of really the kind of importance that they've always had in the consumer's life, firstly. But secondly, a lot of local brands in particular have won, not because they made an effort, but simply because nobody else was in that space. So the way that they spoke to their consumer, what it is that they were saying to the broad market of consumer in South Africa did not resonate. And those things are what's going to hurt them now. So the brands that are going to get hurt now are brands that have always just done the same thing, said the same thing, have not really taken into account who they are speaking to, how they are speaking to those individuals, and what it is that they are selling to them to make themselves an important part of the decision of how and where I spend my money.
All right. Tumi, let me come back at you with this. In this week's Financial Mail, I am quoting a report by Wunderman Thompson about how brands can survive a recession. It was written mostly before COVID-19, but a lot of the lessons are relevant. It's an important piece of work. I've interviewed the new Chief Executive Officer at Wunderman, Miles Murphy. The headline on this piece is going to say that right now is the worst time for brands to go dark, to pull back advertising spend, to reallocate. The difficulty is that a lot of brands are saying, well, I've got this marketing spend, but I would rather spend that on staff retention, on helping people, on outreach, that kind of thing. But this piece will say that the recovery rate for brands that go dark is very steep. How do you convince brands to keep communicating at a time like this, when the easy default is to say, I'll wait until it's over?
So you spoke about a very important, way of responding. First of all, I think going dark in order to wait it out. I agree with you, is the equivalent of burying your head in the sand and hoping the storm goes away, right? And well, by all indications, the storm is actually here with us until 2023. So that's a very long time for a brand to kind of try and ride out the storm. But also going back to actually a point that Pumi was making there, perhaps the consideration should be with the comms budget that you have, what are you speaking with your consumers about? About what does it mean in terms of staff retention, and demonstrating the empathy that you as a brand have with the world within which you exist, around speaking about addressing the material changes that we are all undergoing, that we are all experiencing. Again, going back to this notion of purpose, that purpose is actually not a moment and an occasion where you get to push out a wonderful, idealistic message when the world is a perfect place. The world, by all accounts, is not perfect, and it's not about to be perfect in the way that we remember it. So absolutely, now more than ever is not the time to go dark. And maybe now more than ever actually is the time for brands to lodge into reality and redirect their marketing budgets towards deeper and more impactful conversations. That's exactly what, that's what I would say. And how that translates, I think, just in terms of understanding your audience, here's what's great, right? Your media channels now more than ever are giving you the evidence. It's really simple. Your audiences that are not watching the news are watching your messaging elsewhere, and they are not afraid to give you the feedback. We don't have to sit in focus groups anymore, quite frankly. The metrics, social media tells us every single day, a brand is in a position to hear back from their consumers. So this is the time actually to tap into those metrics and understand the data.
Pumi Mashiko, I meant to say, by the way, that, sorry, go ahead, yeah.
I'm saying, waiting out the storm really is going to be a function of, that's what's going to separate the wheat from the chaff. Yeah. Because the reality is, if you're going to survive, if any business is going to survive the next 2 to 3 years, they are going to have to sell more often. And to sell more often, you have to be top of mind for your consumer. You have to be in the face of the consumer. And by not communicating to them, by not speaking to them, by going dark, you're simply hastening your demise. And I think that the one thing that a lot of businesses in South Africa are going to have to come to a reckoning with is where the consumers are, where the bulk of the consumers are. We've got to stop being afraid of the people that are actually our consumer. We're going to have to throw away the tools that have been convenient for the communicator, and we're going to have to start using the tools that are convenient for the consumer, the languages that are convenient for the consumer.
Pumi, I absolutely concur with you. I just wanted to say one other thing. The comment you made earlier about not watching the news anymore. On behalf of all my colleagues, thank you. Okay, and we'll take this conversation offline at some point.
If you hadn't been rude about my plant.
Part 2 of our conversation. I want to talk about AdFocus 2020. It's different. It's going to be done virtually. I know that the events people at Arena have had a large, they've had a paradigm shift as far as the way in which they do events is concerned. They're doing a very good job, but it's different. But nonetheless, this I contend, and I have been involved with this program for a long time now. I know it's an important program in the advertising industry. Pumi Mashiko, to you first of all, as someone who's coming off 2 years of chairing the jury, having done it, why do you think this program is important?
As a business owner in this environment, it allowed me to see into other people's businesses. It allowed me to see what it is that we're doing right, and it allowed me to be able to benchmark myself against my peers. The business of advertising is often very overlooked. You know, a lot of the time people
so what you're saying is it was 2 years of industrial espionage for you. That's what you're saying.
But it is, and the thing about it for me about AdFocus is it is for everybody that participates. It is exactly that. It is a window into what other people are doing right and how you can do it right too. Because the creatives get that all the time. The creatives get that with DNAD, they get that with the Luries, they get that with CAN. And this award looks at the business of it, and it allows us to be able to say, what is it that we are getting right in our business?
Okay, Tumi, are you still with us?
I'm absolutely there. I'm smiling with like glee. I think, you know, when I received the invitation from Pumi, the first thing that excited me was exactly the longevity of the AdFocus Awards, and reflecting back. In fact, I said to her, you know, I cannot believe that the AdFocus Awards is relevant today to me in my life stage now in my career, as it was when I was a young girl in Mafikeng, buying like a little financial mail supplement, you know, at Molopo Sun, you know. So the other thing for me that's important about the AdFocus Awards, precisely because it is focused on business, was a first-hand view on what can be improved. So with every submission, you are benchmarking against what was evaluated the year before and many, many other years before, but it also helps you fashion what can be done better in the future and how far have we come. And that's completely what I find exciting. And I must say, I find the quality of conversation a little bit more mature, in that, maybe mature is not the right word. I find the quality of discussion, well, I'll find the right word, but the evaluation of business, I enjoyed how holistic it was, and not necessarily looking at a stream or discipline within the industry, but rather, you know, the entire business. How is this business still standing? I love that. I love that about, you know, the AdFocus Awards.
To me, I lost you completely, because when you said that you went to go and buy it in Mafeking, I'm thinking that this is the only copy of AdFocus that we sell in Mafeking. So, Siyabonga, we thank you for that.
No, I'm referring to the little supplement. You know, there's that little section in the financial mail where it's like, you're justifying why you would want to be in the advertising industry in some town where, like, how many examples do you see? I think that's
Miss Picking. Don't answer that.
I think that Jeremy, the thing about it, and Dumi and I have spoken about this over the years, is when I started in this business of advertising, what that AdFocus annual was for me was it was a directory, to know who else is in the business, what companies are here, and what people are here, and what clients are sitting in which company, and who is doing what, and who are the business leaders, who are the business leaders, who are the strategic leaders, what are the case studies of the stuff that I see on TV,
who made
that has translated into that AdFocus annual, and why be part of it is so much about being an integral part of what keeps our business standing, what keeps our business, because our businesses are the reason why we're such good partners for our clients, is because we ourselves are businesses, and we ourselves have to be thriving businesses, and we have to understand the environment of business and the intricacies of business in order to be able to be that partner for our clients. And what AdFocus does, and judging it over the past couple of years, has been so much an integral part of making sure that this thing remains alive and entrepreneurial and thriving, so that we can be the service provider that we are today.
Okay, Pumi, I'm going to interrupt you now. Okay, I'm going because you've given us all like the ad fluff, and that's great, and I appreciate it. I have two questions for you, and then Tumi, I'm going to give you an opportunity to give us a sense of what your strategy is this year. But Pumi, to you first of all, what was your approach to chairing 2018 and 2019? And maybe more important than that, because this addresses a number of the questions that I've got coming through on the live chat. Where did you find the deficiencies in entries were? In other words, how can people improve what they're doing?
It is so critical to be able to articulate what it is that makes your business stand out. The entry itself is a series of questions for those who haven't completed one themselves, but there is also an opportunity to have a 1,000-word summary of what your business is about and what your business has achieved or learned or done really well over the past 12 months. It allows you as a business to introspect, because it's got components about your people, it's got components about your work, it's got components about your financials, and each one of those components are so important in that they together tell a holistic story about the business that you are running. The thing that has been an interesting challenge to watch is how ambiguous people like to be, because it is also an awards ceremony. You kind of think that you can play with what you're putting in there, but the reality is that that judges' room is full of people who are in this industry. It is got people who are in this industry, who work in this industry, who work with this industry.
And so Pumi, if I can interrupt, who know the business of advertising and the numbers around the business. So you can't pull the wool over the judge's eyes.
You can't con us. You cannot con the judges. Guys, this is not some motivation that you put in there to make yourself look sexy.
I love the body language.
And then it's also fudging numbers, right? So is it really, do we really fall in this bracket? Or because we got this new client in the last 12 months, if we add this number, it makes us look better. That's not what it is about. It really is not what it's about. The entries that have stood out for me, and they have shown in the winners too, are those businesses that have been brutal with themselves and in laying themselves bare in that entry, in being able to say, in this part of our business, maybe we did not do so great, but in this part, we did exceptionally well. And we know about it too. You know, we know when you've had a migration of staff leave your business. We know when you have won a piece of business. We know when you have lost a piece of business. And in the brutality of looking at yourself and filling in that questionnaire as succinctly and concisely as possible, and being true to what the nature of your business is, often you are rewarded with the award, because we know it too. You know, you've just given us a glimpse of how honest you are with yourself too. That's what makes you stand out.
All right.
Yeah.
Pumi,
Also,
thank
use
you.
a copywriter.
Okay.
Use the copywriter.
Really.
Don't just like
Use
give
yes,
some-
use a
Yeah,
copywriter.
yeah.
We do it. We appreciate good grammar and punctuation in this awards program. Tumi, I want to come to you. You have all the power now. Okay, so very quickly,
Where was the
I
power
want
when I was
you
there?
to give. You had all the power, Pumi. Tumi, just a quick introduction from your side, your background in the industry, and I mean, do you have a different approach this year?
I think that my approach is very related to my background, actually. So first of all, I come from a strat background, and I don't have a long track record of working in the multinational and traditional structure. In fact, I've hopped around quite a lot between like the traditional agency, doing my own thing, setting up a business, wrapping it up. And I've always worked in the areas of broadcast, telecoms, and other highly regulated industries. The lesson there and how it informs my outlook here is really back to Pumi's point. What is your story? What is your story, one, in relation to your business intent, and how consistent have you been? I think that's a very important thing. And then the second thing, just from doing the rounds in the industry, is the power of diverse thinking, which I think is the superpower of our jury this year. You know, I've been very deliberate in bringing in very diverse thinkers and some disruptors. So, for example, bringing in disruptors in the media jury, bringing disruptors even in the main jury, and in the student jury has been quite interesting, because you will get a very different perspective. You know, you have people with experience in telco, for example, who will look at these submissions and be critical in a very unadvertising agency kind of way, and perhaps tell truths that we as the choir, having been in the agency world, will completely take for granted. So I'm very excited about that. So Jeremy, going back to this idea of power as well, I think the sum of us this year more than ever is certainly greater than our parts. I think it's a great position to sit in, but the role of the chairperson is to be the convener. But they are incredibly intelligent, more experienced, brighter, more dynamic minds that make up this jury, I think, this year. And it's going to reflect in the results, I think. Yeah.
Tumi, I just want to know, is this year's judging going to be influenced by hair? I'll tell you why I asked this question. Because our admin person who's running this for us says, if you have any questions for our panel, please feel free to post them in this live chat. And then Palesa says, Tumi and Pumi's hair looks incredible.
Darling.
So I just can't.
We told you.
Palesa, thank you for that. We are very grateful. And thank you for referencing my lack of hair as well. I really do appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. Guys, we are 10:45. We've got 5 minutes to run on this. I want to focus very quickly. Something that all three of us agreed on before this this year's awards. And to me, maybe you pick this up. This new Adaptability Award. What is it, and what is your expectation?
I think first things first, I would say it is probably the most essential reaction, the most essential response to the times that we are in. The Adaptability Award is a chance for brands, as well as their agencies, to demonstrate their response and their resilience to COVID-19. You know, if you look at the window, the time frame that we would be evaluating in, it's so short, right? But I refer to the impact of COVID-19 as the event that has dragged us kicking and screaming into the future, right? And this is a chance to demonstrate that moment of growth and how we continue to grow in spite of the challenges that we have. So that's what I find exciting and necessary about this. And then taking it back to AdFocus as an institution, I think AdFocus as an institution, and certainly as a platform, it is absolutely critical that we become the aggregators of this story. How are we as an industry rising to the occasion, and how are we as an industry demonstrating our ability to overcome? So that's really what it represents to me.
And it's not just about adaptability externally, in other words, what you did for your clients, but I'm assuming that you would also want to know how the agency itself internally changed either its systems or the way in which it treats staff, or whatever the case is.
It's especially about that. It's especially about, so the partnership is not just about the wonderful campaigns that you've put out, but how have you empowered your staff to keep going? We are living in a world where many businesses are facing retrenchments. We are absolutely not exempt. But with the resources that you do have, how have you empowered your resources to continue to deliver against the odds? Especially because we've been having this conversation about being in an existential crisis for a while. Well, here we go, you know? So how are you overcoming it? How are you working through it?
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Pumi, in other words, it's how agencies have managed to pivot.
The P word.
All right, folks, I'm going to start wrapping this up. Just a couple of points. Entries, we're accepting entries, so entries are open. Yeah. We've announced the jury. I'm not going to go through all the ins and outs of the dates and that sort of thing, because that's well documented on our Red Zone website. Pumi is the outgoing chairperson. I mean, just in this open forum that is the webinar, thank you, because you brought fresh thinking to this process. You challenged people, and the one thing which was important is that there was noise in the judging room. I always think in any competition, when there's noise in a judging room, that's good. Tumi, I hope there's a lot of noise as far as you're concerned. Pumi, I want to give you the last word on this, because you're the outgoing chairperson. Give your incoming successor one piece of good advice.
So being the convener is not just about allowing everybody an opportunity to have equal say. It is also about going and leading into uncomfortable parts of the conversation that people may not want to get into. And it's about stirring that, because it's in those nooks and crannies that the gems reside. In leading into those courage spaces, you have to be the person that gets there. You have to be the person that drags everybody kicking and screaming into having the uncomfortable conversation or asking the difficult questions of the businesses that they are evaluating, so that the cream can rise to the top.
For the love of Pete, please take that plant outside and give it some water. Pumi Mashiko and Tumi Rabanya, thank you both for being part of this webinar, and that gives, I hope, our audience tens, hundreds of thousands of people that have been part of this conversation today. I hope that they have a really good idea of what we're looking for, and I hope in the early part of the discussion we've also given some people a little bit of inspiration. For me, the most important thing is keep going, and for goodness sake, now is not the time to go dark. To both of you, thank you very much indeed, and we really look forward to a bumper entry this year as far as AdFocus 2020 is concerned. It's a very different program, but it is the same program. It's important in terms of evaluating the business of brand building, brand communication, and advertising in South Africa. To everyone who's dialed in today, thank you very much indeed, and I hope you have a successful and safe day. Mask up when you go out.